interesting. Maybe we should rename it to Big Bad Councils. The time's running out. Appears that writing may be on the wall for certain councils who have made certain statements over the years which don't stand up to scrutiny. But before we get into that, please, Hamish McClay, set us free.
Well, welcome to a beautifully bright Friday afternoon. And for those of you who can't stand the weather, what a shame.
All right, all right, all right, all right.
No, but that aside, it is important that we maintain a course until something is rectified to actually make things change that particular course. And we have to keep on about the same subject because not enough people are taking notice of it. And we're actually speaking about them in the title of our podcast this week. It's to do with cladding, but it's also to do with the timeline that Greenwich can't escape because the timeline's in there. But it's also within the timeline of the Grenfell disaster. We know 9 years ago that took place, and we knew the council and those particular sort of circumstances failed their residents there, and the naming is about to come up from that. And we can actually sort of take it back that little bit further when we actually sort of speak about Hillsborough, and the final details of that are going to come out. And retrospectively, council members can be held responsible retrospectively. Bear that in mind, all of those councils out there who are not taking advice from their residents when given the information. Now, we've sadly had this repeated denial, and we'll go through the timeline. Steve will explain that. But we've had 9 years since Grenfell for people to look at this seriously. We've had goodness knows how many conversations trying to get in and out of sort of Parliament relative to the quality of the standard of material that they're actually going to be replacing or not replacing. There's PAS 9980 standard, which is totally inadequate. But I mean, let's stick, because Steve is the knowledgeable one here, and he's the one who's actually sort of living through this. I mean, we're living alongside it, Gareth and I.
Well, yes, but we're acting as social commentators, whereas Steve is a social realist. He's actually living within the thing, affected by the thing, and has been single-handedly, Steve, welcome to the show, single-handedly trying to push the agenda forward. There have been times where people have pointed at you and saying you're standing in the way of effective remediation, but it turns out they're remediating at a standard which at best could be sort of lackluster, and as worst, frankly, criminal. And you've had to put together and spend your own money, albeit helped by a GoFundMe campaign, in order to be able to prove the point. So I think we should probably talk about that first of all. Welcome to the show, Steve Day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thanks very much. I mean, I think we're all becoming experts on it, or at least aware of these terrible ways of limiting the liability to the construction industry, because on our journey, we've come across lots of issues when we thought we were just going to talk about cladding and, trying to get it off. We've uncovered all kinds of things. But yes, no, let's go to the good news. So yesterday, I got a draft version of our fire report from an experienced M-Fire, Master of Fire Engineer, that we've commissioned after raising £4,300 in 23 hours from our neighbours, to basically make a point that we need, a very clear point, that these highly combustible XPS panels going up our fire shafts, this is the second most combustible material in Europe, and the material and these panels are banned on new buildings. So
I'll tell you what, I was almost going to suggest for the remediators, if they wanted, they've got a lovely second income stream, because when they pull these XPS panels off, they could resell them as firelighters.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the barbecue industry will be happy to take some of these panels. But yes, I think for your, I mean, it's just something that I want to say to the viewers. Yes, we've got a report here, and yes, it says what we wanted to say, but why on earth do we need to have to raise £4,300 to create a report with the help of a fire engineer to justify already banned material to be off our buildings. It's absolutely insane.
What was
So
more,
you
what
know,
was more insane was what they were arguing to do the remediation on your buildings, and let's face it, all other buildings of a similar nature, was that it was acceptable to leave these highly inflammable materials on the side of the building, having taken off the outside cladding. You take the outside cladding off, but we'll leave the firelighters attached. It seems mad.
and on the stairwell. And when you have a single escape stair going up 16 stories, it's called a protected escape stair, and there's special building regulations even at the time of construction that said this needs to be a sterile area, and you can't allow fire and smoke to go in it because the fire brigade needs to go up and the poor residents need to come down, and there isn't the use of any other way. We can't go down on the lift during a fire. But if Gareth, if you could be so kind, just put that report back. Let's just get the piece that I think is important from it, because I think it is very, very encouraging that the fire community are actually in agreement with us. And so it's sentence 7.03 there. So the fire engineer says, in my professional opinion, these factors, when considered collectively, this is all the factors on the fire stairwell, justify the replacement of the remaining XPS panels and verification of the fire resistance performance of the glazed stair enclosure to provide greater confidence in the resilience of the sole means of escape and firefighting stair. So they've picked all of that up. They've also picked up the fact that there isn't any form of fire protection test evidence to know the risk of leaving the panels in place, because they don't know what the product is and they don't have any tests. And this basically will be used now by us. This is the next step to firstly give the freeholders the opportunity to make Barratt, the builder, take off these panels. Now, it's proportionate. The costings are around 400 grand of a 20 million remediation project. So it really isn't a large proportion to take these off. And obviously, if they stay on, they're putting the most highly combustible material, leaving it on in the worst place. So I think, and will be very interesting, will the freeholders take the hit and push Barratt, or will they say, no, we have a fire report that says they're safe, even though we have no evidence, we're going to leave them on? And the final point I'd make is, even if they do that, the fire landscape is evolving and getting more seriously bad, because the rise of e-bikes was in the press this week. Somebody had to jump out their first floor window to avoid a lithium battery fire from an e-bike. And these are explosive batteries. What happens is they're thermal runaway batteries. So what happens, they silently in the casing get hotter and hotter when they're going south. And then all of a sudden, it'll blow up a fire door.
But you can't put them out with water either, because they're self. What's the word? They provide their own fuel, effectively.
Yes, exactly. And so our point is that they're claiming that these XPS panels, there's no way you can get any fire near them, because they've removed two from the balcony area where we've got the verandas halfway up the building. And they're saying, yeah, if someone has a barbecue there, maybe it could hit the panel. But they forget the use of e-bikes conveniently, and it's going to get worse and worse. And yes, they can ban them, but we all know people don't listen to their banning. And it only takes one night, one e-bike, one fire. So I think it's a flawed argument to say that just because there's no sort of near barbecue areas to the panels, you can then discount that, other ignition sources like e-bikes. So this is what the report says.
Either there's no benefit from them being there, and what they're demonstrating to be showing now is that they are in fact going to be producing a problem ongoing.
Well, the insurers also don't buy it. And also the National Fire Chiefs Council says the firefighting shaft should be non-combustible. So even the fire chiefs don't agree with that. And to make matters worse, at the bottom of each fire stair, not only are they packed with these highly flammable panels, but they didn't put the fire doors at the bottom. So, that also means the fire shafts are compromised, and that's completely illegal. They should have done that. So we were failed twice on this. And our local council, of course, have kind of turned a blind eye and said, well, that's what this PAS standard says. You can enjoy keeping your panels on. And on the fire doors at the bottom, that was condemned by Greenwich Council Building Control itself. They said that evidence doesn't exist. And we've been fighting. That was a year ago, as we both, well, three of us know. So we've been banging on about it for the last year on Cladding Matters. And, they still haven't recounted. And to bring you up to date, so we had a press article that went out in Inside Housing last week. And I mean, it was great because the Labour MP Abner hasn't been that supportive, really. They summarised the position that the council denied. We disagree with that and we want the council to retract. Fine. And she said she would write to the council. Well, Inside Housing did an amazing job of saying, it was a Grenfell inquiry, Casey, and an MP raising concerns over Greenwich Council's stance on building safety, when she wasn't really that supportive of us. And we've seen in lots of pictures her with the leader of the council, Councillor Anthony Okereke. And, she'd ignored, us ever since then for the last year, apart from a couple of emails recently, which basically doesn't take us anywhere. But what was very interesting is the council lied in the article twice. Firstly, they said that initial email from Councillor Rachel Taggart-Ryan in April was a private email just sent to me, and it was a private position, not a public one. Well, that's problematic because the position is set out in the email as the council's position. And you don't get a private council position, do you? Oh, no, the council can't say what they think. I don't think so. And they will be saying that's the council's position everywhere. So, no, that was not an email just of Rachel Taggart-Ryan's position. And even if it was from a cabinet member claiming to represent the council's position. They knew full well I would have to, as chair of a residents association, share that with the 1,000 residents that I represent. I couldn't keep that to myself. And also it's been shared widely because we're campaigning for remediation. So it was never, ever going to be a private email.
But it was never targeted at one person anyway. This is a position held by a council. And
and it clearly said that.
There are various.
But then what's interesting, they then, the second lie is that they claim that there was no evidence basically of building regulation breaches. That was clarified in the June statement, right? That wasn't the June statement, which followed afterwards, and that was published on the council website and posted through every individual letterbox at RAC. It doubled down on the position. It said there was no evidence of building regulation breaches at the time of construction. And what this press statement says, they accept that was ambiguous. Well, it's not ambiguous at all. It's not ambiguous. And they've never accepted it was ambiguous, even if, until this press statement anyway. But there's nothing ambiguous about a council explicitly saying there's no evidence based on all available information, that there's no evidence of building regulation breaches at the time of construction. There is no ambiguity there. So they lied twice in this press statement. So let's get the full list of lies up, Gareth. Let's have a look. So we've got a nice list now, and it just shows an alarming response when it's to do with building safety, illegal and dangerous defects, and in all the knowledge of the Grenfell inquiry, the council's dismissal of residents. You can see the lies of Greenwich Council, and I'm very careful when I use the word lies to be explicitly correct, because obviously there's a risk of saying things like this, but I generally believe they're lies, and I think I've justified them. So if you could go to the other image, Gareth, I think you've got the white image up there.
I'm so sorry about that. There we go.
All right. So, okay. So, so basically, I'll just go, oh no, you're great. So basically, there's our leader of the council, Anthony Okereke, and the first lie is basically saying, we set out below the council's position. This is that email they said was just sent to me, and it was a private position. It says, we set out the council's position based on all available information. There is no evidence to suggest that the works were in breach of building regulations applicable at the time of construction. And I say that's a lie because there was evidence available to the council of that. And then we go to June 25, and this is a good year ago now. We get it doubled down. The council doubles down on that and sends that out to all the residents by post, and also not by post, they're actually physically dropping the letters into each letterbox, which is probably a bit over the top, but they also put it on their website. But again, it publicly says the council's position at this, there is no evidence to support action by the council under the Building Act 1984. And the evidence to use the Building Act is breaches of building regulations at the time of construction. So therefore, that is a lie again. So they've lied again. Then I don't know if you remember our music video. I'm sure you do, Gareth and Hamish. But then they say, we remain neutral in terms of the building's original construction. Well, as we've clearly demonstrated, the previous two positions is not neutral at all. They've denied all evidence of building regulation breaches. That can never be seen as a neutral position. So that's another lie. Then we jump a whole year now, right? So this comes to the inside housing piece. So these are the two lies that I've alluded to. So June 26, the April 25 Taggart Ryan email was not a public statement on the broader question of whether the original works met the building regulations in force at the time. Well, let's go back to that. So as you can see, Rachel Taggart Ryan, we set out the council's position based on all available information. There is no evidence to suggest that the works were in breach of building regulations at the time of the construction. So they're saying it's not a public statement on whether the original works met building regulations in force at the time. That is a downright lie because it clearly was. And then finally, the final lie is the council has accepted after correspondence, I don't know who that correspondence was with because it wasn't with me, that it was ambiguous. Well, as I say there is nothing ambiguous about the council denying all our evidence existing in two council position statements. And I end with stop the lies, Okereke. And there you go, you see. That is problematic for the council because it just really shows just how uninterested they are in morality in public life, public safety, duty of candor and telling the truth, correcting the record. And of course, if you throw in the harassment allegations from the head of legal against me, and also the fact that they've put out councillors on public WhatsApp groups with 192 of my neighbours in, that I'm inciting violence towards female councillors, you have a pretty grim picture of just how a local authority treats building safety and residents desperately worried, 1,000 residents desperately worried about their safety in Greenwich in 26 on the 9th anniversary of the Grenfell fire.
Well, what a tumultuous thing. I think we need to come to the end of this today, but thank you so much, Steve. Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well, an interesting aspect there, through what sort of Steve just explained, the longest time that any councillor or anything to do with the council have spent within those buildings was to actually put notes through letterboxes. They didn't bother to check anything out, but they've got the time to put notes through letterboxes. Well, they haven't got time under invitation to go and have a cup of coffee to speak to either Steve as the chair or in fact one of his colleagues, repeatedly inviting local people actually to go along there. Even the MP hasn't had the decency to actually sort of step in there.
Thought that was in his remit, wouldn't you?
Well,
it's her remit, but it's Abner. She's a lady, but
apologies. It's a lady. Apologies.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, she should I mean, I've asked for a meeting with Abner, the MP, and the council to, try and get them to justify, and maybe even take Stephanie Barwise or one of the other experts. There's a lot of people that support my position that do know what they're talking about, but ultimately, we should have a meeting with the MP and the council, and they shouldn't be afraid to justify why they believe all my evidence doesn't exist.
And particularly, I think we still haven't got feedback from Barrett, how is they can actually justify the situation, because they're relying on what the council have said, because the council are not going to intervene and explain what the real situation is, although they've had the evidence there.
All right.
Look, the question is why, isn't it?
It is why, but I'm afraid we're going to have this all the time we've got available for today. Thank you so much, Steve, for giving us the continued dregs from this saga and making sure they're writ large for all to see. Hamish McClay, thank you for making this happen in the first place. I and Hamish and the rest of the people behind Cladding Matters absolutely support your efforts, Steve. And please,
thank you.
Once again, I extend the hand of friendship, so we can shake them warmly by the hand, and bring them and bring any member who wishes to make their position clear from Greenwich Council. We would absolutely ask that you come and take your right to reply here, writ large, and talk about why it is you're happy to allow this travesty to continue. However, at this moment, I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend. Try and enjoy the sun. Stay hydrated. As the man once said, wear sunscreen. And please get your feet on the ground. Reach for the stars and look after your mental health. Until next week, hopefully, with some even more perfect news to hear on a Friday. Steve, I wish you all goodbye. Bye-bye.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll polish through the moon, but their word always fails.